Hey Hilltop Huskies, it's me, Miss Bermes. I'm in my home and I'm going to read a book to you. It's called Crash by Jerry Spinelli. And the cover's great, isn't it? What do you notice? What about the face? It's a baby face. Someone drew a mustache on him. That's actually the cover. I didn't even draw that. It's like a thought bubble coming from a baby. And it's a football player. So, when I go to read at night, I try to find a cozy spot to sit. I have some blankets, good lighting. So this is where I'll be sitting, and that's the book I'll be reading. Crash by Jerry Spinelli. Chapter 1. My name. My real name is John Coogan, but everyone calls me Crash, even my parents. Started way back when I got my first football helmet for Christmas. I don't really remember this happening, but they say that when my Uncle Herm's family came over to see our presents, as they were coming through the front door, I got down into a 4-point stance. I growled, "Hut, hut, hut," and charged ahead with my brand new helmet. Seems I knocked my cousin Bridget clear back out the doorway and onto her butt into a foot of snow. They say she bawled bloody murder and refused to come into the house. So Uncle Herm finally had to drag his whole family away before they even had a chance to take their coats off. Like I said, personally, I don't remember the whole thing. But looking back at what I do remember about myself, I'd have to say the story is probably true. As far as I can tell, I've always been crashing. Into people, into things, you name it, with or without a helmet. Actually, I lied a minute ago. Not everybody calls me Crash. There's one person that doesn't. It's just one of a million things that have bugged me for years about this kid. I can still remember the first time I saw him, the summer before first grade, 7 years ago. Then, it was a sunny summer day. I was in the front yard digging a hole with my little red shovel. I heard something like whistling. I looked up. It was whistling. It was coming from a funny-looking, dorky little runt walking up the sidewalk. Only he wasn't just walking regular. He was walking like he owned the place, both hands in his pockets, sort of swaying, la-di-da with each step. Strolling and gawking at houses and whistling a happy little dorky tune like some Sneezy or Snoozy or whatever their names are. And he wore a button, a big one. It covered about half of his chest, which wasn't that hard since his chest was so scrawny. So here he comes, strolling, whistling, gawking, buttoning, dorking up the sidewalk onto my sidewalk, my property, and all of a sudden I knew what I had to do. Like there was a big announcement coming down from the sky. Don't let him pass. So I jumped up from my hole and I plant myself right in front of the kid. And what's he do? He gives me this big grin and says, "Good morning, I'm your new neighbor. My name is Penn Webb. What's yours?" And he sticks out his hand to shake. Well, I ignored his question and his hand. "Penn?" I said. "What kind of name is that?" "I was named after Penn Relays," he said. "Huh?" I said. "It's a famous track meet. When I was born, my parents let my great-grandfather name me, and that's the name he picked. He won the race at the Penn Relays in the year 1919. 30,000 people cheered him on. He lives in North Dakota. I lived in North Dakota, too, until yesterday. Then I moved here to Pennsylvania with my mother and father. My mother had me when she was 40 years old. I was a late baby. You're gonna be a flat-nosed baby if you don't shut up, I'm thinking. What does your button say? I asked him. He stuck out his scrawny chest. It says, "Hi, I'm a flickertail." What's a flickertail? A flickertail is a squirrel. There's lots of them in North Dakota. That's why it's called the Flickertail State. What's Pennsylvania called? The Poop State. Well, he didn't crack a smile. I didn't even know that it was a joke. He got all frowny and thought about it, nodded and said, "Oh." Then his motor mouth took off again. "North Dakota's a real flat, where we lived anyway, and there were prairies. My dad says when the wind blows over the prairie, it looks wavy, like the ocean. I never saw a real ocean yet, but my dad says we're going to go see the Atlantic Ocean soon. My dad's an artist. He makes birds out of glass and ceramics and wood and metal. He can make any kind of bird you can name, but he's the best in the world at prairie chickens." I cut him off. "My father's starting a new business. He works 70 hours a week, sometimes more." "Well, my mother works at home like my father. She makes greeting cards and buttons like this." "My mother works and goes to school, both." "I like dogs, but I love turtles. Would you like to see my turtle?" "No. I have a grandfather named Scooter. He was a cook in the U.S. Navy." "I'm an only child. I'm starting first grade this year." "Me too," he said. And for a second time, he asked me my name. "Murgatroyd," I said. Well, he didn't even blink. He just stuck out his hand and said, "Nice to meet you, Murgatroyd." Instead of my hand, I stuck out my shovel, and he shook it. He laughed. He thought it was the funniest thing since Bugs Bunny. For some reason, that laughing was the last straw. I plucked the silly button off his shirt, dumped it in the hole I was digging, and covered it over with dirt, and I stomped and I flattened the dirt with my foot. Well, the kid froze in mid-laugh. His eyes took up his whole face. Then he turned and he walked down the block. He wasn't whistling now. Well, I figured that was the last time I'd ever see that ham bone. Well, that's the end of chapter 1. What do you think? 2 characters were introduced. Crash, whose name is John Coogan, and Penn Webb. I guess Crash is the football player.